Hey everyone, and welcome to the first episode in the Grand Theft Auto review series, and today we're looking at the game that truly put the franchise on the map, Grand Theft Auto 3. But first, a brief history of where the series began and what had come before. Development of the first Grand Theft Auto game began in April of 1995 at DMA Design Studios. However, thanks to constant delays, the project didn't release until 1997. Originally titled Race and Chase, this game was planned to release on MS-DOS, Windows 95, PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and Nintendo 64. However, the Saturn and N64 versions were later scrapped. The goal of Race and Chase was to produce a fun and addictive multiplayer car racing and crashing game, and the game's producer David Jones cited Pac-Man as an influence, saying how the police chasing the player was meant to invoke the feeling of Pac-Man being chased by the ghost. And judging by this early screenshot of the beta, you can definitely see that influence in spades. The first Grand Theft Auto revolved around a player committing crimes for the city's crime syndicates, with the goal being to collect the most points from completing jobs, and thereby opening up new chapters and missions. This was all done while avoiding law enforcement who would hunt you down the more terrible crimes you committed. The game also had 3 settings modeled after the real-world locations of New York, Miami, and San Francisco, though in universe they were given the names of Liberty City, Vice City, and San Andreas. A sequel dropped in 1999 and focused on the character of Claude Speed as he travels around a place called Anywhere City. Very creative, guys, you get paid the big bucks for that name. Doing pretty much the same stuff as the first game. The big change added to the sequel was the ability to take work from different gangs in the city, and causing to help one gang over the other would affect how the others would react to your presence. The game also allowed players to take part in side missions such as taxi missions and finding hidden packages around the city. Both games were graphically similar in that both used a bird's eye view perspective to depict the action. An arrow on screen would direct you to your objectives in place of a map. The bird's eye view caused some frustration as it was impossible to see what was coming at you on the road, but still both games garnered high praise for its freedom and open world design. However, both Grand Theft Auto and its sequel were nothing more than precursors for what was to come next. Development on the third game in the series was shared for the first time as DMA Design was joined by a little company known as Rockstar Games, who would publish the title. The goal was to take all the aspects of the 2D games and bring them into the third dimension, along with crafting a truly living and breathing 3D world. The development team even wanted to include a multiplayer component, but this was dropped due to time and resource limitations. When the game finally did release, it changed the way the industry saw open-world games. The idea of going wherever you wanted and taking part in multiple types of side missions at your own pace was unseen. Also, the believability of a world that had been created was unlike anything that had come before. Grand Theft Auto started a new era of gaming, promoting the idea that games didn't simply have to be linear A to B levels. And for years after its release, other games in the genre would constantly use its blueprint to help them craft their own. There are too many GTA clones to name, but trust me when I say that a bunch of these games that I'm showing on screen right now owe GTA 3 a debt of thanks. So how does the game hold up after almost 20 years later? Well, let's dive right in and find out. The story in GTA 3 evolves from the format of the 2D games, but still has a bit of a major shortcoming. In the past games, you were a random thug answering phone calls to get missions, but now there's a bit more interactivity to the whole affair. The game begins with the protagonist robbing Liberty City Bank. I say protagonist because he's technically never named in-game, though it was widely thought at the game's release that he was Claude Speed from the original game. I mean, seriously, look at the resemblance here. It's uncanny. In all seriousness, though, it was this image of Claude that made fans think it was this guy, though years later, GTA San Andreas confirmed that this is in fact Claude. Claude suffers from silent protagonisticitis, so don't expect him to introduce himself. Anyway, Claude is mid-robbery here when his girlfriend Catalina, along with her gang, the Colombian Cartel, turn on him and leaves Claude for dead. We then see Claude on a convoy truck getting ready to be shipped off to prison when a bunch of gang members blow up the convoy, destroying the Callahan Bridge in the process. These guys were bombing the convoy to get another prisoner out, but hey, you're free now and off to seek your revenge against Catalina and the cartel, or at least that's where you think we'd be going immediately. Claude instead teams up with another prisoner called 8-Ball, who despite that name is not about that fortune-telling life, but rather deals in explosives. 8-Ball sets Claude up to work with a man named Luigi, not that Luigi, this Luigi, and in time Claude becomes a prominent name in the Mafia based around Portland. He later works for the Leone family, consisting of the Don Salvatore, family friend Tony Cipriani, and the Don's son Joey. It's the usual type of stuff, escorting hookers, attacking the triad at their laundromats, taking care of people, things most normal people would call crimes, but the mob would call casual Fridays. And just when it seems like everything is going well, Sal tries to have Claude whacked, or I guess diced, since he sends me to pick up a car to dump only to be tipped off in advance that there's a bomb inside. Coming to our rescue here is Sal's trophy wife Maria, who along with the help of her friend Asuka gets us to Stone Island and out of mob territory. However, because Claude was tied in so deep with the mob and because Asuka runs with the Yakuza, she's not going to help us any further until we deal with Sal. So one sniper bullet later, and now Claude is running with the Yakuza. After a little bit of time, Claude eventually works for Asuka's brother Kenji, a crooked cop named Ray, voiced by Robert Loggia of all people, and finally, I kid you not here, a Donald Trump parody called Donald Love. Asuka and Kenji have Claude dealing with the remaining mafia in the area and their rivals, the Colombian cartel. Ray mostly has you knocking off witnesses who are aware that he's a bent cop. And finally, Donald has you stirring up things seemingly all over to help Love Media flourish. One mission for Donald involves you having to grab a Colombian cartel cruiser to kill Kenji to spark a gang war. Though in an odd turn of events, after doing some of the endgame Donald Love missions where you collect packages that seemingly having no clue what they are or what they do, Donald disappears. Yeah, I wish I was kidding or that I could tell you we find out what happens to him on the next episode of Grand Theft Auto Z, but there's nothing here. Also not helping is that all the other 3D Universe GTA games are prequels, so there's zero chance of ever finding out the real story here. Even Rockstar has provided no real answer to this day, so it's perplexing to say the least. Anyway, after Kenji's death, Asuka is hellbent on killing all the cartel members, and she eventually corners them at Staunton Island's construction site. One of their informers, a man named Miguel, who was with Claude in the opening mission, reveals that Catalina has kidnapped Maria and is holding her ransom for Claude. Claude makes his way over to Catalina's mansion on Shoreside Vale, only to have us give chase to Catalina, who runs off to the dam to escape on a helicopter. So it's time for the ultimate battle of revenge. Claude has been dreaming of nothing else for days. It will truly be a glorious battle of wills, a spectacle for the world to see, or thanks to the conveniently placed rocket launcher, a one-hit kill, providing you can line up the shot, because damn it, this thing is so freaking finicky. And so ends Claude's tale for revenge, and hey, he even got Maria back, and now they can settle down and relax and...
I broke a nail and my hair is ruined. I mean, can you believe it? This one cost me $50.
What the heck was that? Did Claude just shoot Maria? I mean, we never see her after this game, so again, I can't really tell. Or was this just to be funny? Like, oh, she was talking too much and he shot her, but, okay, that's kind of cold. So how does this story hold up? Well, I'd say it's not much of a far cry from the stories presented in the 2D games. Granted, now you see all the characters in person, but it's no different really structure-wise, and a lot of that has to do with Claude and the fact that he's got no voice and thus no personality. And don't get me wrong, I love GTA 3 to death, and I will die defending it, but I feel like Claude is just a yes man, and a character with a voice could have led to more interesting story developments. For instance, when Donald tells me to kill Kenji, Claude just nods and off I go because, you know, it's a game. But I was really to myself thinking, damn, I mean, Kenji's mission strand wasn't the best, but he doesn't deserve to die. I mean, I get that Claude is like a stone cold killer, but be honest with me, how much more invested would you have been if you had more of a choice in what missions you did, or at least heard Claude's thought on the matter? Maybe I'm asking for too much here. I mean, this is the early days of the series, and the goal here was probably just to bring the elements and the structures from the 2D games into the third dimension. And hey, later games fixed this little nitpick in spades, so it's not that big a deal. GTA 3's open world elements of game design might be a tad hard to adapt depending on where you're coming from into the series. For instance, if you play GTA 5, and at this point you probably have, considering it's on every goddamn system seemingly known to men in the current generation of consoles, even the upcoming ones, because Rockstar just will not let GTA 5 die until they squeeze every last bit of life out of it, and are looking to expand your GTA nostalgia, then you might struggle. Granted, if you played 3 back in the day when it was new, you probably have overcome most of the shortcomings already, if you continue to play the game to this day. The two biggest shortcomings coming from the design is the accessibility of the world in certain areas, and the gunplay. Regarding the open world, it's pretty much a go wherever you wish, though the biggest flaw here is the water, in that it's death for you in this game. If Claude even steps a toe in the water, you're a goner. And this holds for if your car flips or slides off into the road into the water, which can sometimes be a tad annoying. Thankfully, there isn't a whole lot of missions built around the being near water mechanic, but whenever you're racing around town or being chased, there always is the slight possibility of the car getting hit or nudged, and the physics might kind of flip out and flip you over a rail or over a hill, and yeah, it might be a little unkind. I'm not sure why they couldn't make a swimming animation. I mean, I'm not asking to dive underwater here or anything, but I guess because swimming wasn't a factor in the 2D games, I guess they figured it might not have been a feature that was needed to be implemented. The gunplay is also kind of underwhelming, but ironically, it's a lot like the loose wild shooting of the 2D games. There is no cover system, and so when you engage in gunfights, it's pretty much the Wild West on the streets of Liberty. It's chaotic, and you feel like a bullet magnet at times. You can lock onto an enemy no problem, but if you're up against 3 guys, you'll be dead before you can move. It gets a bit better when you gain weapons later in the game that have a first-person mode, and in those cases you can stand a fair distance away from the enemies and just take your shots. The sniper rifle and the machine gun are very helpful in this regard. Also, since the game released in the Dark Ages before the times of regenerating health, you're going to need health pickups or armor to survive. Armor can be purchased at the gun stores, but it's a tad expensive, though thankfully you can find it around Liberty, hidden out of sight. Another small design flaw is that there isn't an in-game map for you to reference. This is again one of those luxuries we take for granted in open world games nowadays. It's not a great necessity to have one, but when you're starting and you don't know the layout of Liberty, you might wish there was something to refer to. Though granted, early missions on both Portland Island and Staunton Island have you starting off with simple drive here missions to get you a little bit more familiar with the layout. However, since there is no real mission giver on the third island, Shoreside Vale, it can be a bit trickier to navigate that island since you don't spend that much time here and there's hills and bridges dividing up the area. Also, the map icons for mission targets and locations don't make the triangles to tell you whether something is above you or below you. Again, that's another old school feature you're just gonna have to deal with. The lack of a map also hurts the game's side missions, as I'll explain now. So when you're currently not being the delivery boy for the plethora of gangs that Liberty City houses, you'll be trying to make money the old-fashioned American way, by getting a job. Claude can grab taxis, ambulances, fire trucks, and police vehicles to take part in small side missions and gain money. Taxis have you picking up and dropping off citizens, and this is another great way to get used to your surroundings in the early hours. Ambulances have you picking up injured citizens and racing back to the hospital. Fire trucks allow you to control the hose and hose down vehicles that have caught fire. And finally, the police vehicles let you essentially be a vigilante and hunt down criminals. This side mission is probably the most fun since it can get extremely chaotic. You're not spared from raising your own wanted level when you take out criminals, so the cops are after you too. Completing all these missions doesn't just net you money, but rewards as well. The taxi missions grant you a new taxi model at the taxi station. The police missions deliver police bribes to your hideout, acting as a quick way to lose the cops if your wanted level's too high and you can't reach the paint and spray. The fire truck gives you a flamethrower at the hideout. The ambulance missions give you health at your hideout when you hit the halfway marker, and then when you finish the strand, it gives you adrenaline and an infinite run. The last real section of the side missions is car collecting, which you might not even be aware that the game has. At the beginning of the game, Claude will get a message on his pager, because this is the early 2000s and cell phones were the size of bricks at this point, telling him to go to the docks to look for an import and export list of cars. It will eventually lead you to this warehouse at the Portland docks, and this thing behind a building on Shoreside Vale, with a list of cars on the side to bring in. Another pager message will mention bringing the police vehicles to the docks as well to a crane in order to be collected. The reward for completing these lists is access to all the vehicles you grabbed at any given time. And while it's fun to search the city and bring back all the cars, the odd thing is just how this whole side activity almost goes unannounced. I know I mentioned the pager, but it just tells you Portland docks. The docks are big, and you might not find this building, and this is where the lack of an in-game map hurts, since warehouses and the crane are not labeled. And you know damn well in any other game in the modern era, there would be a symbol on the map telling you where this place was. But again, I understand that this is the beginning of the franchise, and I'm sure the developers were hoping you would just probably explore and come across this place, which, to be honest, is not that unlikely. I'm pretty sure the Shoreside Vale one is near a hospital that you might just randomly come across, and the one by the docks, you visit there a lot, so maybe you would just stumble across it. Aside from these meatier activities, Claude can find 100 hidden packages, where the reward for every 10 is a weapon delivered to the safe house, which cuts down on your spending bill. There are unique stunt jumps where you get cash for trying to reenact your favorite Fast and Furious stunt over these little ramps. Rampage tokens are scattered around, giving you small missions in which Claude must unleash his bloodlust on the streets of Liberty, whether that's through killing a set number of gang members in a time limit or blowing up vehicles. Word of warning though, you probably want to save before you attempt the rampages, because for some bizarre reason, when you fail a rampage, the marker is taken away permanently and you can't retry it. So if you're looking for that 100% completion rating, you're going to want to swing by the hideout and save. And mind you, all of what I explained here is what's in-game, that you're told to do. The greatest thing about GTA is that you're free to pretty much do whatever the hell you want, whenever you want. Want to find the best cars and fill up your garage at your hideout? You can do that. Want to start with a 6-star wanted level on the third island and race back to your hideout on the first? You can do that. Want to put in cheats to change the weather or make citizens go crazy? You can do that. And yeah, the game has a ton of cheats to mess around with. Want all the weapons in the game? You have access to that. You want the cars to fly? You're sick of working for a living and you want a direct deposit of cash? It's all possible with cheat codes. And trust me, I've spent a good amount of time playing the base game as I have playing around with the cheats. And yes, by that extent, you can use the cheats to make the game itself easier, though I would advise you not do that. Try to play the missions as basic as you can, since it's more fun to use what the game gives you to succeed, and honestly, there isn't really anything in the main story that's so taxing it requires you to cheat. There's a lot of fun to be had in GTA 3, whether that's playing the main game or making up your own fun as you go. The presentation is a tad dated by today's standards. Character models are a bit blocky, and whatever you do, don't look at their gorilla hands. Really distracting the more you look into it. The voice acting is great, with everyone sounding the part, and while there aren't that many recognizable names on the cast list as the later games would have, everyone here performs admirably. The writing is witty and smart, and it'll get you to laugh on one or more occasions. The city is detailed enough, but it has a bit of a shortcoming in its draw distances. There's only 2 in-game loading screens that pop up whenever you reach a new island, and they only last a few seconds. This means a chunk of the game map is being rendered as you move through it, and that means that there is severe texture pop-in and texture rendering. As you drive around, don't be surprised to see buildings and objects pop into view and slowly get more detail. This might be considered a huge graphics flaw and a shortcoming, but considering that this is an open world game in early 2000 and it has very few instances of a loading screen, I'll cut Rockstar some slack here. The music is a tad non-existent when you're on foot, but thankfully getting into any car will solve that immediately. The radio stations are filled with catchy earworm songs, some of which are not even popular well-known songs for that matter. There's also the talk radio station called Chatterbox, which has hilarious parody interviews along with parody commercials. You'll have your favorites by the end of the game, like Pogo the Monkey or the Medieval Millennium Fair. Some of these I can quote to a T even to this day, which proves how long I've played this game. Also, bonus points if you play GTA 3 on the PC, since you can actually place your own songs into the radio station customs folder, and then it makes your own playlist in-game. And hey, any video game that lets me incorporate my own songs into the game itself is okay in my book. Overall, I found GTA 3 to still be a great experience even after years of first playing it. The game has some shortcomings in the gameplay and story departments, but this was, like I said, the beginning of the series, and hindsight will show us that Rockstar made changes and improvements to each following title in the franchise. Though it really is a testament to how great the design of GTA 3 is, considering that even with all the bells and whistles and fancy graphics of the later Grand Theft Auto games, GTA 3 still plays exceedingly well. There's never a moment playing where I feel like something is painfully outdated to the point where I go, God, I wish I was playing the more recent entry of this. Yeah, the lack of precise gunplay and no swimming can rear its ugly head more often than you'd like, but the game knows its strength and wisely makes missions skate around these limits rather than run through them. Also, there's so much to do in the game even after the credits roll. Side missions, vehicle missions, hidden packages, stunt jumps, the cheat codes. It makes GTA 3 a sandbox that you never really want to leave. So make sure you come back next time when the GTA review series continues when we look at Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Thanks for watching.